and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
I'm over here.
Hey, Clerk. Hello, Clerk.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy.
Here.
Commissioner Andy Yamarosa.
Here.
Commissioner John Surdy is absent for the roll calls.
If everyone would...
John, could you leave that open?
She's going to open the back door. She's going to open the back door.
All right, thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell. Right up here.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've got a little bit of a different format, obviously, for today's meeting, and you're all at tables. And it was suggested by people that had come up at a previous commission meeting that we have a workshop, a work session to discuss the financing portion of fixing our infrastructure. A lot of questions came before, during, and after the Lake Worth 2020 discussions. And a lot of those questions involved alternative ways of financing them. And we have experts here from staff to attorneys. Oh, he's the city manager, will do that. But this discussion today, first of all, there is no time limit other than be respectful of everybody's time so that everyone gets a chance to speak. But there's no time limit on your participation. But I did want to emphasize that we're going to be discussing financing options. And I see faces, you know, that are for changing it, for not this, for this type of financing, for that type of financing. Everybody has a different type of opinion. But just be respectful of one another, whether they have your view or not. And we'll discuss and put up, city manager's going to be standing there putting up the different sources and ways, and staff will discuss ways, because the one thing we all can agree on is that the streets need to get fixed. And we know that we have serious issues when it comes to infrastructure, and that's a fact. So we're going to talk about that, but if we could just, again, keep it number one. This meeting is just a discussion about financing. This is not to, you know, just please keep in mind that we're not here to berate or belittle or anything to one another. We're just going to be discussing that, and we'll keep the conversation to that. City Manager?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to introduce a few people before we get started. First, over on this side of the room is our illustrious experts. To the left there, that's Heather Encinosa. She works for the firm of Neighbors Giblin. They are experts in bond counsel and various legal stuff that I can't even begin to imagine. So Heather will be listening and a resource, as well as Jay Glover, who is our with the firm of PFM. They're our financial advisors for the city. Christy Godot, you might recognize her. She's one of our city attorneys with the firm of Torsidia. No more is what I'm going to say. Okay. But anyway, she's been a tremendous resource to us in the city. The missing spot there is our finance director, and you may or may not know that we're in transition right now. Unfortunately, the finance director won't be here until February the 2nd. We have a new gentleman who's coming in, moving from California back to the east coast of Florida. And his name is Nehru Hinraj, and he'll be here, and he'll be a delight for y'all to meet. So all this information we're going to gather tonight, we'll be turning over to him as well. City staff, I don't want to introduce all of you, but there's a few scattered around. If you can just raise your hand. If you have any issues or questions or anything else, they're always available. I'm here to help, and I'm glad you guys are here tonight. As the mayor indicated, the staff was directed by the commission to come and open some lines of communication, some forums for people to come and say, here's some ideas, some concepts, some things that we think need to be put into the pot or the mix when we're talking about financing infrastructure, rebuilds, constructions, new in some cases, new infrastructure that's needed all across the city. And you know, we wanted to have this discussion, put everything out on the table so that we can have it looked at objectively. First and foremost, and the first screen anything has to go through is going to be, is it legal to do? So I'm going to ask our experts over there, as we write things down, as people talk about concepts, I'll try to formulate it if there's a question that it's legal or not legal, or there might be some issue, I want y'all to feel free to chime in and say, here's what we advise or know, okay? But everything else, there really isn't a bad idea. This is about coming up with a way that the city can pull together and reach some consensus on how to fund infrastructure. There will be, at some point after we get this discussion resolved, moving into a discussion of the plan of what is the infrastructure plan. But you can't even get into that unless you agree to some degree on what that financing methodology or scheme or sources are. So that's the purpose of this forum, and I want to encourage you on your table. You have from the old Lake Worth 2020 plan, there's a map there that kind of shows the whole city. That was the 73 miles that you can kind of look at and see the extent of the issues that were in the old plan. But there's also a sign-in sheet. Please, we'd like to be able to have a dialogue. If you've got an email address or phone number, please fill that out so that we can push information out to you as we go through this process. And there's also the, I guess it's the bios on the two experts over there if you have any questions of them particularly. And pencils for comments. Is there comment cards I see on there? Please, if you don't feel like getting up and talking and you want to be more discreet. We also are checking the Lake Worth 2020 email address, lakeworth2020@lakeworth.org. Please use that if you don't want to talk or if you have a follow-up question that doesn't get responded, and we'll do our best to get the information back to you. We really want to have this dialogue. We really want to hear what some of the concepts or concerns that you've had about the financing. Bring it forward. I'll be writing on the board. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to start recognizing people or answering, if we can answer some of the questions that come up, but I'll be writing that on the board while we go through the process.
Okay, yeah, I would like to invite anyone that would like to come up and speak to the podium. It is right there by the diamond doors here up front. And if you want to, do they have cards? Comment cards?
There's some already turned in.
There's some already, Pamela?
Okay, the clerk's got it.
Okay, excellent. And again, if you would, when you come up to speak and you're called to speak, just please say your name and give us your address for the record, okay? Thank you. First up, Loretta Sharp, followed by Peter Tim.
Then I go. I'm fine, thank you.
Calls her Ruckus.
Loretta Sharp, 1311 South Palmway. When you first started talking about the bond, I was absolutely against it. Totally against it. And stood at the podium at City Hall and said I was against it. But then I started looking around. I started talking to experts. I started talking to the staff. And I said, we've got to do something. Our sewers are bad. What we're dumping into the intercoastal is terrible. We don't have enough water in the hydrants to put out the fires. The potholes are everywhere, including the alleyways. What are we going to do? I still did not like the bond issue. I still did not like that we were being asked to do Botwell. Or the $800,000 was going to each neighborhood association to do with what they wanted. Because that's an old trick. So I thought about this for a long time, and this would be my suggestion to you to think about. I hate the word assessments. I know the word assessments means as much to people in this room as the bond issue. But we can do assessments. We can assess for the fire department, and we can assess for the police department, and we probably can assess for what's the word? Hydrants. I would say that every house in Lake Worth, east, west, north, and south, get an assessment, and that money saved, take out the Botwell, take out the $800,000, and that money saved from that, and the assessments will pay for the bond issue. Thank you.
Do we want to wait till all of them go, or do we have to?
Let's
Go through them all, okay. Peter Tim,
Yes,
Followed by Katie McGivern.
thank you very much for this opportunity. And yes, we've been through this before and it failed. And the reason it failed is you were doing it improperly. Number one, I don't believe we were told the truth when they told us that some will pay a little less and some will pay a little more.
Mr. Tim, would you just speak into the microphone? I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
I have to speak into a microphone.
I can hear you, but they might not. Thank you.
Some will pay a little less and some will pay a little more. The truth is some will pay nothing, while others will pay thousands of dollars a year for the next 30 years to pay off the $131 million loan with interest. They also said this is the only way we can finance the bond issue. No, there is another way if we want to take it. And I believe this is a better way and a fairer way if we want to give them all of this money, which I do not want to do. They, all owners of properties in Lake Worth received their notice of the proposed property tax and the proposed ad valorem assessments. In the non-ad valorem section, it lists the items that can be put on the non-ad valorem section, and that they are roads, fire, garbage, lighting, drainage, water, sewer. And I believe that is what we should use. And please note, roads was number one. At the last commission meeting, I gave Scott Maxwell a copy of six different property appraisers reports, along with a breakdown of the taxes paid. The first was a homesteaded property with an assigned value of $21,578 and paid zero ad valorem tax, but must pay a non-ad valorem tax of $496. The second was a homesteaded property with a tax value of $39,000 and paid $348 in ad valorem tax, and also paid the same non-ad valorem tax of $496. The third was a homesteaded property with a non-homesteaded property with 2 units with a tax value of $14,000 and pay $1,750 in ad valorem tax, and also pay a non-ad valorem tax of $843, almost double that of a single family. The fourth was a non-homesteaded property with 3 units and pay a non-ad valorem tax of $1,264, or over $400 more than the 2 units. The fifth was a non-ad valorem property with a 4 unit and pay a non-ad valorem tax of $1,585, over $400 more a month. And the last was a non-homesteaded property with 6 units and pay a non-ad valorem tax of $2,528, over $800 more. The items on the non-ad valorem tax, the single-family houses are Lake Worth stormwater, $75. Lake Worth refuse collection, $245.76. And Solid Waste Authority by Palm Beach County for $175. The total is $496.36. The property appraiser's office told me they do not keep records as to how many rental units there are in Lake Worth. So I have no idea how many more people would be paid for this road project. It could be 1,000 people, it could be 5,000 people, or it could be 10,000 people. But it will also add to the total of those who would pay nothing for it. Everybody would pay the same amount for it. A few years ago, we were going to put the fire department on the non ad valorem tax roll. But then we elected this commission, and they found the money necessary from someplace, so that it was not necessary to do that. I don't know where they found the money, but could you please do it again? While we were trying to put the fire department on the non-ad valorem tax roll, they found out that it could not involve the EMT portion of the fire department, and it had to be taken out. And I wonder if there is other things in this bond issue that also would not be allowed. All of these people use as much of the roads as we do. And this way, it is the fairest way to pay for any road improvement we want to make. Why would some people pay nothing while others who now pay the highest taxes in the city pay thousands more for 30 years? I went to the property appraiser's office and talked to a very nice and I think a very intelligent fellow who told me, yes, we could use the non-ad valorem for the road repairs, or we could use what the city has done, which was much easier to do. He said it was much more complicated to use the non-ad valorem method than the ad valorem way. I believe with a project as big as ours, we should not have to use the easy way, but instead use the right way and the best way. I read an editorial in the Lake Worth Herald where the Lake Worth Herald, where the vote comes to, I read in the editorial in the Lake Worth Herald titled, "When the Vote Comes to Haunt." It states that the writer had failed to someone in that the writer had talked to someone at the scene, that they did not have enough water pressure to put out the fire. The writer then wrote, and I quote, "If the bond issue had passed, this low pressure situation would not have been avoided. But after improvements are made, there will be more water available for emergency situations like this." Close quote. With all the house fires in Lake Worth, this is the first time I have ever heard that we could not put out a fire because of water pressure. And what does this have to do with a road project? I believe this and many other parts of this road project have nothing to do with the bad roads in front of anybody's house, and should be taken out of this road project. These issues, if they exist, should be addressed under the water department or other departments, which are also listed under the non-ad valorem act. By the way, the water department raises their rates 5% for the next 3 years. Also, the sewer department raises it 9% for this year. Thank you for your attention, and are there any questions before I sit down, as I only got one bite at the apple, and then I must silent. Any questions? No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. Katie McGivern, followed by Mark Perla.
Hi, good evening. Katie McGivern. I'm the person that started the Citizens Against Unfair Taxation PAC to oppose this bond. I really didn't want to do this, but I felt for the sake of my family and being able to afford to live in Lake Worth, I had to. I think that this meeting is premature. I think you skipped a very important meeting that you should have had. Days, not even a week after the bond vote, you had a meeting where people were allowed to come forward and talk about how they had problems voting. Now, I asked for and never got a meeting with the same format about how people could come forward and tell you why they did not like the bond, about what the problems of the bond were. Now, this meeting is nice. I'm supposed to give you suggestions on basically how to take more money out of my pocket. I think this meeting is unnecessary. I will give you some suggestions, but I have to say, I think this meeting is unnecessary. I think you already take enough money out of my pocket. I think the problem is not enough money, but it's mismanagement of the money you already have. An early piece of literature that was handed out at the District 1 meeting, I hold in my hand. It was from the city. And it talked about 30% of existing roads would be resurfaced. It also gave a very nice breakdown of what the general obligation bond funding would go towards. I agree with a lot of people by saying I didn't like the $800,000 per commissioner, basically a blank check, when Jamie Brown had mentioned at a meeting that our roads budget was $500,000. You know, the whole premise was that we needed to fix our roads. But the commissioners were more than willing to take $800,000, which was more than the $5,000 set aside for our whole city for road repair. Please do not include something like that again. There was also, I didn't like the Park of Commerce being lumped into what was supposed to be a roads and infrastructure fix. I don't want to pay for your Park of Commerce. If someone wants to come into the city and do business, that's up to them, not me. This piece of literature was basically never seen again. I got it at the District 1 meeting. It also irritated me that the city, you took $50,000 of my tax money, you thought it was okay to take, to quote-unquote educate us. And yet the material I got in the mail did anything but educate us. This thing, there's no mention.
We're talking about financing this moving.
There's no mention of the cost of the bond. There's no mention of the length of the bond. So like I said, I believe this meeting was a little bit premature. You can't go forward in a constructive and proper way if you're going to make the same mistakes again, which I hope you won't. No one has been given a chance to come up in this format like we have tonight, and I thank you, to say what we needed to say. I had to go out, I mean, I had $6,000 to go out and try to tell the people what this bond was really about, which, again, I don't think that your literature did a good job of doing. I, again, would have liked to seen something like I got at the District 1 meeting with Commissioner Maxwell very early on, and I think it did do a good breakdown of where you were planning on spending the money. My suggestion again, and Mr. Bornstein, get ready to write. You could use the money that you already have to fix our roads. Second thing I think you should do is you could take back the CRA. If you took back the CRA, we would have all the money that we need to do this project and many more. Right now the CRA is districted in our downtown. That's not really where their mission should be. I would strongly like to see this researched. It's not that hard to do. It's been done in the past. Other municipalities have done it. And I think before you try to stick your hand in my pocket, you should search that option. Another thing that really frightened me about this bond was that there was no cap on the per household repayment amount. Another thing that frightened me again, like Ms. Sharp said, the length of this bond. 35 plus years? That's impossible. Most roads don't even last, what, 15? Last evening, Jamie Brown quoted 20. So like I said, thank you for having this meeting, but I think this is premature. You really, as a courtesy to the 50% plus people, you should have had another meeting before this. And I think this one would have been much more useful after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Perla, followed by Ginny Powell.
Good evening, Mark Perilla, 701 South 8th Street. I'm glad there's some professionals here, because I've been doing some research on the internet, reading some articles written by economists, financial experts, and bond experts since this issue came up, trying to get more informed accurately with facts. And I just have one question, one simple question. Is it true, because the majority of the articles that I've read are stating that a lot of other municipalities in the US at this time are taking advantage, that these bonds are at the lowest rate they have ever been in history, and that they will never probably be this low again. So I just want the professional's opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ginny Powell, followed by Michael Fox.
Good evening, Ginny Powell, 224 North Palm Way. Good evening. I know some of you know me, not just from the neighborhood, but I work for the county. And I'm not here to talk about that too much, but the reason that I want to come before you is to talk about a potential alternative to the bond for financing our road work, and that is grants. I won't pretend that I'm an expert, but I can tell you that from my limited experience, that grants could pay for a lot of this, I believe, I strongly believe. Some of you who are familiar with the Snook Islands project and the Bryant Park project, these are county projects in partnership with the city and others. Only about 10% of the projects that we build are, that there's county tax dollars that pay for those projects. 90% of them are funded with grants that we receive from many different entities. Army Corps of Engineers, Florida Inland Navigation District, many sources, Fish and Wildlife Conservation,